if each of the four of you could comment then on what seems to be the punchline, that if someone said, don't use the word vegan or vegetarian or plant-based, just tell me what exactly it is you're saying. It seems like what we're saying is to eat beans and whole grains, obviously vegetables, but that's kind of the obvious thing. But it really sounds like we're saying when it comes to dinner time and you're hungry and you're not eating animal products, we're saying, and we're not emphasizing nuts and seeds as the main thing. It sounds like we're saying beans and whole grains is the core of what we're saying. Is that what each of four of you, is that what you're saying is the main thing that you're recommending for dinner? Or is that what would...
I love to say, I want you to eat vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, mushrooms, nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices in infinite tasty combinations. Bring that conversation back to food. And there's no limit to the variety in all the combinations of those ingredients that you can make delicious and nutritious at home.
Very well said.
Oh, I like to tell people the only white things at your table should be the tablecloth and the people eating dinner. But no, I like to, and as far as the food, you want something that came off a tree, got pulled out of the ground, or that grew from a plant.
If it doesn't grow, don't eat it. Unprocessed. I always say fruits, vegetables, beans, lentils, whole grains, nuts, and seeds. And, you know, one of the big mistakes people make when they go more whole food plant-based is they're just not satisfied. They don't, the satiety when they are only eating vegetables or whatever. And so trying to focus on the beans and lentils, which have a higher satiety index, or potatoes, as long as you keep them fat-free. Sweet potatoes may be a little bit better than the white potatoes, but just keep them fat-free. Eat enough until you're full, but make sure that you're focusing on a wide variety. You don't want to do something crazy like eat only bananas all day, because then, okay, that's not good. So it's got to be a good variety, unprocessed, plant-based. And that's all you need to do. It's that simple. And that's the beauty of it, right? It's that simple. Just a variety of unprocessed plant-based foods, and that's it.
And I stopped using the word plant-based about 11 years ago, and I prefer plant exclusive, because plant-based, a lot of people think that means they can still eat, 49% of their calories from animal products or processed foods. So I prefer to say plant exclusive because sometimes the V word does turn people off in certain settings if I'm teaching at a spa or something like that. But I always tell people, eat food that comes from a plant instead of food that was manufactured in a plant. And if it had a face or a mother, don't eat it.
Yeah, so that's
exclusive. I like that.
Yeah, exclusively plant-based, 100% plant-based. I do still use the word whole food vegan sometimes, but I do agree that the V word sometimes gets people.
I will say nothing that ever had a mother, a face, or a foot. And the reason I put the foot in there is to get shellfish.
When people come to you, when your patients come to you and their blood sugar is high, and they say, okay, I'm gonna eat a whole food plant-based diet, and they go home and they fill a giant bowl with wild rice and chickpeas and sweet potatoes. If they're leaving out the vegetables and they're eating large quantities, it still seems like you could keep your blood sugar high from that. It's not like eating cucumbers where it never goes up. So do you find that in all cases, people who follow this get their blood sugar down to appropriate levels, or can you abuse the beans and grains and not mix them with vegetables and just have so much whatever is in it? I don't know if it's sugar or whatever in the complex carbohydrates that you still keep your blood sugar too high.
It would be hard to do it. But I do think if you're eating whole food, plant-based, no oil, fat-free, low fat, and you didn't, pound the vegetables as much as you should or whatever, it still would be hard to keep your sugars high in the long term if you stuck to it, right? So you'd really have to try hard to overeat a lot, like massive calorie, which is harder to do when you have so much fiber in your food and you're focusing on the more starchy stuff, which does, again, have the higher satiety index and make you feel more full. I think if you focused on something like that and overate an insane amount and tried to beat it, sure, fine. Maybe that wouldn't work. But if you're eating a normal amount and not quite doing it right by not eating enough vegetables or whatever, if you focused on potatoes, wild rice, and some beans and such, I think you'd still lose weight. You still get your sugars down. That would still work.
Okay. Now, one question that is an issue that I'm finding is that when people say whole food plant-based, they're saying beans, grains, nuts, seeds, fruits, vegetables. And then there's people like Brian Clemente Hippocrates and Gabriel Cousins that are saying, hey, we used to serve fruit, but we feel that it feeds under the microscope yeast, mold, fungus, candida, and cancer. And there's a guy, and they say, Thomas Seyfried of Boston College has done studies, and it shows that it feeds these things. So and they're saying that in nature, fruit was wild grapes and wild blackberries are low glycemic, where the ones that we get in the stores have been bred, they're hybridized, they're sweeter and bigger. So they're making the case that fruit is not the same as it used to be, and therefore you could get yourself have issues with it. Have you heard of their argument, and do you have any thought on it?
Well, there's a couple of silly points to the argument. Well, first of all, flip it around. What about, like was mentioned by Milton before, what about the animals nowadays? Do you think those are natural? So, if you don't want to eat the natural, unprocessed, plant-based stuff because it's been genetically modified somehow or selectively bred, come on, look at the chickens, look at the pigs, look at the other things. It's even more horrendous and horrific that a chicken can't even walk. It falls over. It's so heavy because it's been modified. But, sure, yeah, avoiding higher glycemic index fruits to an excessive degree, like dried fruits, maybe, not going too crazy on the dates and some of the raisins, you don't want to eat 10 pounds of them, whatever, slightly. But I don't see any major truth, because if you think about all these randomized controlled trials, these research studies, the Ornish, all this stuff, they included these foods. And you still reversed heart disease, and you had dramatic reductions in events. So clearly the science, the data is showing that you can include these in your diet and have it be healthy and safe. And the whole, it's different than what it used to be. Sure, fine. I get that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the wrong choice.
And it's not that different. These people clearly need more fiber in their diet, because the amount of extra, fructose you will get from the, handful of grapes that you can eat, from, the bunch of grapes you buy at the store is not going to make that big a difference. It's not that much of an extra glycemic load. These people are literally trying to make a mountain out of a molehill. I mean, it is an absurd, ridiculous argument. Given the size of the human stomach, it's not significant in terms of a given meal, the amount that you will eat. So no, it's a ludicrous argument to make. It will not make any significant difference at any given meal. So you can just throw that argument right out the window.
I spent 8 years working at the True North Health Center, and Dr. Goldhammer is going to be on this summit. You can ask him. He's seen over 40,000 patients. I don't think one admission was because of eating too much fruit. And all the years that I worked in a hospital in critical care as a respiratory therapist, never once on the chart was somebody admitted because over consuming fruit. We already are making it difficult enough for many people to adopt a plant-exclusive diet, especially when we're telling them to take away oil, and you tell them to take away fruit, and you've lost them. Fruit is what makes this diet sustainable, delicious. We are meant to eat fruit. Our ancestors ate fruit all the way back to the Garden of Eden. And if you're going to present that viewpoint, I think it's only fair you present the opposite viewpoint and have Dr. Robbie Barbero and Dr. Cyrus Kambata on this conference, who eat primarily a fruit-based diet with type 1 diabetes and have literally helped thousands of people improve their insulin sensitivity and reverse their type 2 diabetes eating massive amounts of fruit.
By the way, we did invite them, but they weren't available.
Okay, well, I'll tell them they better come next time. I'll text them right now.